This just in, Lewis Hamilton has opted out of the last year of his Mercedes contract, and he will be joining Ferrari in 2025. And today, I'm going to tell you guys why I think it's actually a bad idea. God, it's going to be so weird seeing him in red. That's so weird. Oh, it's weird. It's so weird. Anyways, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Car Rant. If you guys are new to the channel, we do builds, we do reviews, and we have candid conversations about cars. So if any of that interests you guys at all, hit that subscribe button, hit the notifications so that you guys don't miss any of the new content that we have coming your way. But without further ado, let's talk Lewis Hamilton and his Ferrari contract in 2025. If you guys have been hiding under a rock for the past couple of days and you guys follow Formula One and you haven't heard, Lewis Hamilton is gonna be a Ferrari driver. That is so stinking weird. I can't even wrap my head around the fact that he will be wearing red in 2025. Now, me personally, I actually don't think that this is the best decision. And here's why. If you look over the years and you look at Lewis's history of his championships, he's won 6 at Mercedes. Now, to be fair, this was during the turbo hybrid era of cars where Mercedes was just absolutely dominant and they had the formula figured out. But prior to that, he won his first title at McLaren. But now that we're in the age of like these the ground effect era of cars, if you will, more focused on aerodynamics as opposed to the engines, Mercedes hasn't figured out what is going on. I think Mercedes might actually have a formula that is going to be competitive this year. Now, if you go back and watch my predictions video on who I have winning in the standings for constructors, I do have Mercedes in 4th as opposed to them finishing in 2nd this year. But I say all that to say, Ferrari has had nonstop strategy problems for the past God knows how many years. Because Lewis is there, I don't think that's gonna change anything. I don't think Ferrari's strategy is gonna get any better because Lewis is there. And personally, Ferrari is just a team of bad luck. I've said it before and I'll say it again. They have had the worst luck whether it comes to just not knowing how to strategize in the sport, or the fact that Leclerc will get pole and somehow he'll crash out, or Carlos Sainz will do, you know, a really good run or something like that and he'll crash out, or something breaks in the car. Ferrari has always had problems for like the past 5 or 6 years. They just haven't been able to figure it out, and me personally, I don't think they are going to figure it out. Now, this brings me to the next point. Teammates. At Mercedes, there was tension between Lewis and George Russell, the veteran driver who's won his championships, driving against this young up-and-coming driver who now has an opportunity to drive for a big team and he wants to prove himself. There was that tension there because George Russell wanted to prove to Mercedes, hey, I am going to be your guy, which I think in a couple of years he will be their guy, and I think he's gonna have to step it up even further to be their guy. But I digress. I don't see any difference with him moving to Ferrari. Me personally, you have Charles Leclerc. That's Ferrari's golden child, right? They dropped a race winner last year, Carlos Sainz, and I'll get to this in just a second. But I do want to make it known, Carlos Sainz is the one that won Singapore last year. He's the only driver to win a race outside of a Red Bull this past season in 2023. Yes, Leclerc has outqualified Carlos Sainz this year, but he has not been able to translate his pole positions or his high qualifying positions into a race. Lewis is that experienced driver at Ferrari, the same as he was at Mercedes. Here's the difference though. Lewis is the new guy at Ferrari as opposed to when George Russell was there, George Russell was the new guy at Mercedes. So when you look at it this way, Mercedes was favoring Lewis. Why? Well, not just because he's won titles with them, but he's been with the team forever. When you look at Ferrari, that is what Charles Leclerc is to Ferrari. Charles Leclerc is the golden child of Ferrari. When you think of a modern day Ferrari driver, I think of Michael Schumacher when I think of all-time Ferrari greats. I always think of Michael Schumacher. But in the modern era of Formula One racing, Charles Leclerc is the face of that team. I don't think these two are going to work well together personally. I don't think Ferrari understands what a second driver should be. Mercedes was able to differentiate the drivers, right? Mercedes said, Lewis, You're a number one driver, and when Valtteri Bottas was on the team, Bottas, you are to be his second driver. Red Bull has figured out this formula perfectly. Max Verstappen, you are our number one driver. Sergio Perez, you are the Mexican Minister of Defense. You are to defend Verstappen and keep these other cars away from him so that he can go on and win those races. Every team has a 1 and a 2 driver, whether they want to admit it or not, right? Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso. He's definitely that number one driver and not Lance Stroll. Williams, Alexander Albon is that number one driver as opposed to that second driver in Logan Sargent. All these teams have 1 and 2 drivers for the most part, right? I could say teams like AlphaTauri or, well, I guess they're like the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls team now. That's weird. I'll talk about that in another video. There are some teams that have the exceptions, like that team that I just mentioned, where you have Ricciardo and Tsunoda. There really isn't a 1 or 2 there. I think they're both going to be competing for who is that number one driver or who even moves up or down in the team, you know? Now, I feel like Charles Leclerc is now threatened even more so because he's got to be thinking, I'm Ferrari 100%. But now this other driver is coming in to wear the red. And this guy is good, like really good. Like if I'm Charles Leclerc, that's what I'm thinking is I have to now prove myself. If anything, Ferrari made this move to maybe even put pressure on Charles Leclerc to do better. Now here's where my issue with Ferrari even making that decision comes in. You had Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. These are both younger drivers than Lewis is. Now, I'm not saying that older drivers can't be elite or dominant, right? Fernando Alonso is in his 40s and he's still driving lights out racing. I'm not saying Lewis can't do that either, right? I think Lewis has the car to do it. I think that, frankly, he does have the team to do it when they strategize right. If I'm Ferrari, I'm thinking long term, right? I have Charles Leclerc, right? He's a young driver who, you know, he's trying to find his full potential and be able to win races consistently and bring them a championship, which that all comes in time. And I think Charles he needs to get going with that. He's had a lot of time with that team to learn the car and learn the system to where he should be winning races consistently. But then you got Carlos Sainz. He's a little bit older than Charles Leclerc is, and he's had that experience in the sport. Carlos Sainz had the only win that wasn't Red Bull last season. To me, that's like, does that mean nothing at all to Ferrari? Especially if I'm thinking long term as a team, right? It's like, you know, you have Lewis coming in who is older and who probably could race into his 40s if he wanted to, but it's like, how long is Lewis going to keep this up, right? We don't know the longevity of how long Lewis is going to be able to drive for. You also have Charles Leclerc, who Ferrari has deemed their guy, so who is driver one at Ferrari, and I think until they figure that out, you're going to have a lot of issues. Carlos Sainz was done dirty, in my opinion. I should start a movement, Justice for Carlos, because frankly, he was done dirty. Carlos Sainz signed with Ferrari in 2021, and he did really well considering that that car was still recovering from the god-awful season it had in 2020. He goes into 2022. He has a really good year. 2023, he gets the only win that isn't a Red Bull. Carlos Sainz, for me, says consistency. If you want a driver to deliver points for your team, that's Carlos Sainz. I view him in the same way as almost Valtteri Bottas, but maybe even a little bit better in the sense of Valtteri Bottas was called on by Mercedes to be the perfect second driver for Lewis. Get Lewis those wins, but you also at the same time need to bring in these podiums and bring in a lot of points as well for the team. For me, this says that says Carlos Sainz as well, but Carlos Sainz, I think, has a little bit of a higher ceiling. I think Carlos Sainz is able to drive a championship winning car and win a championship. He's won races. I believe he won Silverstone in 2022. And now he won Singapore in 2023. I say all that, he's proven that he is a very good driver. He's a consistent driver. And if I'm Ferrari, I want consistent points and consistent drivers. Not to say that Lewis can't do that. He can do that. He's proven he's consistent. Getting a 7-time world champion does not fix your strategy. It doesn't fit your slow. It doesn't fix the slow pit times that you have as a team. Doesn't fix any little unreliable issues in that Ferrari that are there. In my opinion, I would have been focusing on getting the best strategist that I can get, because clearly whoever was doing strategy for them before wasn't doing it, right? Rewind to Monaco in 2022 where Charles was leading that race, and then they called him in, and then they were like, oh no, sorry, stay out, and he ended up losing the race because of that. But what do you guys think of the Lewis to Ferrari move? Do you think that this team is gonna win finally gonna win a championship with one of the greatest drivers in that seat? Is Lewis winning his 8th title? Is there gonna be conflict between Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, the same way that there was with George Russell and Lewis when George Russell came to Mercedes? Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you all for watching. We love you, appreciate you. God bless. Peace.